Hi, welcome. I'm Helen Lewis from Decision Design Hub, and I'd like to cover the filtering questions with you. And ultimately, it's the process, the questions that we use in the decision tool that ensures that your actions are moving you towards your living context that we've actually done. So, these questions come about. The process would be you've written your current reality, you've created your living context, which is your values and the future that you'd prefer. We then actually identify some actions and business systems and behaviours that we need, and also, of course, brainstorming some ideas that you have in that you want to fix or things that you want to improve, new ideas, new enterprises, any ideas, any decisions that have to be checked. That we can use these filtering questions in the decision tool. So, and I'll show you the decision tool at the end of the slideshow. So these questions have actually been developed over many years, and ultimately they check our head, our heart, the future, the present, the root cause, people, environment, and prosperity. And they are based on holistic management. So these values-based decision making it's actually really fundamental to enhancing our lives, but also it allows us to kind of start on the journey towards that circular economy, which is really paramount. We hear the circular economy talked about, but a far better cyclical use of all our resources and our energy. But at the moment it's a bit checkered to actually get there, and it can be a bit clunky and difficult to actually be genuinely achieving that circular economy outcome. With I think it's a growth space. Waste is certainly a growing area, and I just think it's an area that we're going to evolve into. But we need a decision-making process to actually get us there, and this decision-making process enables that to happen with just increasing our consciousness about our ripple effect on people, environment, and prosperity. So let's go through the questions, and we'll clarify those for you. So the first question is towards your preferred future. So you've created your preferred future, you've described it in your living context. So this is where we refer to answer this question. And basically, will this action lead us towards or away from the preferred future described in your living context? It's a simple question about that. Yes or no, question mark, or not applicable. So the cause and effect is a great question, okay? It gets to the root cause. It's where the rubber hits the road. So does this action address the root cause of the problem? Really, it's about making sure we're not just putting another Band-Aid on. We've actually peeled back the onion, got to the core root cause, and so that we are, it's the best use of our time and money if we're solving the root cause of the problem. It's a bit like if I've got someone hitting me on the head with a hammer, and I keep on taking Panadol and Nurofen and Panadeine for it, and then having health consequences because of that, rather than stopping and asking the person beside me to stop hitting me on the head with the hammer. Sounds very simple, but how many times do we keep doing the same thing and expect a different outcome? And we're not solving the root cause of the problem. So people, have we considered the effect on anyone whose love, respect, support and connection we value now and in the future? And so this is a really key. It's really about understanding our impact and ripple effect onto the people around us that matter. And even in just wider community, just how we're showing up and whether or not that's a good thing. The way in which this option enables us to show up, is it good, or is it moving us towards how we want to be seen, or is it moving us away from that? So that's really ultimately the consequences of the actions about how it impacts people. And this can be family, it can be friends and community, in the widest networks, your colleagues. It's basically anyone in our lives that we really are wanting to consider in regards to our decision making. And the knock-on effect to those people. And of course, this is the funny from Gary Larson. Mr. Wembley gets a little bit cross, and it's just an indicator of being mindful of our ripple effect and impact on other people. So yeah, very important to ensure that the wider people are being considered. So our environment. Now this is obviously paramount. Everything that we either eat or consume comes from the earth at some point in its life cycle. So really, it is a really useful question to ask and answer, whether or not we're actually enhancing our environment and regenerating the function of our environment with the action we're taking. We rely on it for everything, so probably a good idea to look after it. And so then we can also ask, so when we ask those questions, we talk about the water cycle. So that for a good water cycle, we need ground cover. So water goes in and it doesn't evaporate. So ground cover is key. Mineral cycle, we need highly functioning soil and soil biology and lots of processing of minerals underneath the ground soil surface. Energy flow, we need maximum green leaf to capture as much sunlight. So the energy then flows through the plant, grows more plants, and also enables and gives energy to all the roots and all the microbes in the soil. That also then triggers, of course, diversity and stability. So more diversity. So the more highly functioning water cycle, mineral cycle, energy flow, and biodiversity is like a tetrahedron. So it's an equal-sided pyramid. If we reduce the water cycle by bearing ground and increasing evaporation, we're actually going to impact on the mineral cycle, the energy flow, and our diversity. So we're simplifying the community, which is, of course, not a great thing. So just to be mindful of that, like what are we doing in regards to enhancing life and what we rely on. So we rely on these ecosystem processes to function, to eat, and to obviously consume things. So all our products come from the earth at some point. And so then we also ask that next question of whether or not we can reduce waste. So can we source it from renewable sources? Can we repair it, refurbish it, reuse it, and then ultimately recycle it? We know this can be difficult, as I said earlier, right now, but gee whiz, isn't it a good idea to start thinking about it? And like anything, if we put it out there, we start consciously thinking about it, all of a sudden we hear of schemes or of initiatives that might actually enable us to participate and solve this problem of waste. So prosperity. So does this action strengthen the weakest link in the chain of production? So the chain of production is all about these three links. It's resource, product, and marketing. And they are key, because if we put our money, time, and energy into these, it will matter the most. So I have a chain here, and if I operate the business and it will break at the weakest link. So either resource, product, or marketing link will break. So if I'm operating the business, it breaks, and I then weld that link. Maybe it's the product conversion weak link. So I weld the product conversion weak link with some time and money and energy and what it needs to be fixed. I then operate the business again, and where will it break? It will break at the weakest link. And so with that, we then weld that. So we're turning this smaller chain into a ship anchor chain with all the welding we're doing, but we're really focusing where we're putting our money, time, and energy, and we're building the business to be stronger and more robust. So let's go on to actually look at these. How do we identify the weak link? So a resource conversion weak link could look like lack of money or time constraints, skills, health, raw resources, and our sun, water, minerals, and converting that into food. So a veggie garden, or just simply being able to convert animals in the paddock, converting that sunlight we're getting in from the sunshine, and they're converting that into the green grass, they're eating that. And then that then becomes the product. And so we have the product is then built from these resources, and we have the product quality, the quantity has to be considered, service offering, what's your knowledge, what do your skills enable you to be able to do, and what do you offer? And then we move into the marketing, which is actually how you make your money or what you earn from your product. And again, the marketing of your product or service will return you, and whether or not that level you're happy with the way in which it's being marketed, and whether or not you believe you're returning as much as you should be returning. So the marketing conversion is the weak link process is really key. Your business will be weak at any one of these at any given time. So it's really important to identify where you are, where you have the weak link in your business, so that you can maximize the amount of money you put into it. For example, if I have an accounting degree and then I work in an accounting firm and I've converted my degree into a service, and I have then converted that into a marketing, because I've provided the service. I can now charge a fee for that service, and that is my marketing link. So if I have a weak link, i.e. I might not have updated my skills for 5 years, so now I need to go, and if I go and get further information and update my knowledge, I will then have a better product, which then means I'll be able to earn more and charge more for my services. So it might be whether or not I'm updated to Xero or one of the new accounting packages, and I get my head around all that, and then I can offer more products and service more people, and so I build my business that way. But it comes down to the fact that I had a resource conversion weak link, which is I've put some time and energy and money into, and that's then allowed me to enhance my product offering, which then allows me to earn more money. So that's the way in which the weak link operates. So welding the weak link in your production chain is wealth generating, and also it's a really focuses you of where you should invest your time and money, and identifying that. So I really like you to now think about your own business and or life, and where you think your weak link is. It's really important to know that, so that you will be able to identify whether or not you're addressing it when we use the decision tool. So money source and use. So the money source, is the money source the most appropriate towards our living context? So for example, if you say you want to be debt free or you risk adverse, well, borrowing money is probably not going to work for you. And so just be mindful of that. It's actually about identifying, in line with your values, where you're getting your money from. And if it's internal, it might be family, friends, or a alternative source. And so that's great, and that makes you feel more comfortable than borrowing from the banks and with interest. Then that's obviously going to be a better option. So that's the idea of this question, is just to check that you're in line with your values about where you're sourcing the money from. The money use can be, is it most appropriate towards our living context? And it's about whether or not it's cyclical, consumptive, or addictive. So this is how we can use money. Cyclical is when it grows on itself. We buy a fruit tree and we continue to get fruit. We can buy one bit of equipment that actually just keeps on doing what we want it to do, and we don't have to, obviously we may have to replace it down the line, but initially it is actually one bit of, we don't have to spend any more money. It just does what we want it to do, i.e. a computer, and those things. I mean, in a farming situation, obviously a cow's great because you buy a cow, it has a calf, and then it continues to provide you. The cow provides it with a calf every year. So it's a cyclical use of money. The consumptive use of money is what we consume. So things that we'll need to keep spending money on, like food and fuel, we use it up and then we need more. That's consumptive. Addictive, though, is when we have to, we actually aren't solving the root cause of the problem, and we keep having to spend money on something because it keeps on flaring up, and whether it's repairs and maintenance or whether or not it's just an addictive use of money, which is over and over again, and maybe even more at some point every time we spend it. So that addictive use of money is obviously not going to be a great use of money. It's and obviously habits, habits and things like that fall into that category. Less gambling or whatever else, but obviously is the obvious money addiction. But other things, we have to be mindful in our life about whether or not we are just band-aiding things. Every month we might be band-aiding something rather than solving the problem. So that's a really good use. They're good questions for money use and source. And now we also have the same ones for energy source and use. So energy source is the source, so is it the most appropriate towards our living context, whether it's abundant or limited. So abundant, obviously, it's going to be solar and wind, and alternative energy that is natural. Limited is going to be under the ground, gas and fuel. And look, you know, given our current living arrangements and, you know, status of living, we obviously use quite a lot of gas and fuel. But it's then just actually asking, okay, is there an alternative? Is there another way? Can we do something differently here? And so it's just getting us mindful about those things. Then the energy use, is the energy use most appropriate towards our living context? So the personal capacity is a great one for this. So we are solar powered, so the source for us is energy is solar. We actually live on green leaf and green leaf converted into meat, and so that's how we live, which is great. And so we need to understand here, though, the use of our energy is a good question for us to make sure that we don't overburden someone, or the person we're thinking will do it, you know, have they got capacity to do it? And again, we can have a cyclical use of energy, consumptive or addictive. So again, the energy use, cyclical is we do it once and we've done it once and we don't have to do it again. Consumptive is an ongoing, so running vehicles and things like that obviously is consumptive. We have to keep on doing it. An addictive use of energy, you know, is again, if we have to do the same thing again and again and again, and we're a bit like the money, you know, if we find ourselves, we haven't solved the root cause of the problem and we're just putting band-aids on, that the time and money, the energy we're using to put the band-aid on is again addictive, and it could actually cost us more energy over time as well as things deteriorate. So then gross profit analysis. Now this is a very sort of easy way of getting a bit of a ballpark figure, particularly if we're comparing enterprises. So it's not necessarily applicable in every option that we'd be testing or, you know, checking using the filtering questions. So it is sort of an optional question, but it is good for when we are. And so it allows us, I'll just run you through it. So what it does is it allows us to compare enterprises. So before we actually do use the decision tool, we would actually do a gross profit analysis outside this. And so you'll have a bit of a ballpark figure to put in there. So the gross profit analysis question is, which enterprises contribute the most to covering the overheads of the business? So what we do is just simply take the income, what we believe we're going to generate, a good income, poor income, and an average income. And then we also run the good, poor, and the average for the costs. So I'll just show you the form. So this is it here. We have their enterprise, we have direct income, and all the sources, you know, where we're getting the income from that enterprise, how we're making the money from it. And then we have the gross income. We then have the variables. So this is where we can actually do and we can run a good, poor, and an average. So each one of these could be a good, a poor, or an average. And it just means that we get a clear understanding about what changeable. So is it price? Is it ours, or is it, you know, all those different variables will determine what the actual end profit will be. What's unique about the gross profit analysis is it's specifically only for income from that enterprise and expenses only associated with that enterprise. So we get clear on those enterprises, the actual enterprise income and costs. So we don't blur it with all these overheads. I mean, for example, telephone, well, regardless what we do, we're always going to need the telephone. We're going to always have a telephone bill. So, you know, these enterprises, it's very much specific costs and income for those particular enterprises. And that's how we do it. And we just run a good, poor, and an average. So then we can actually see whether or not an enterprise, an idea that we might have, will be actually be able to contribute to surplus to the business. Cool. Okay, gut feel. Now this one is considering all the questions and your living context. How do we feel about this action now? So this is really about your heart and that gut feel, whether or not you're feeling good or not. Okay, we need to actually really acknowledge that our gut feel is worth a tick across or a question mark. But and yeah, it's a very useful tool. And also then right direction. So this is a sort of the final question we'd ask, and we actually can check the options, comparing the options across the decision tool. We can now sort of say, so after we've done all the questions, we can now have a look and say which option provides the greatest return in terms of our living context, towards our living context, for the time, energy, and money spent. So for all those things, factors, all those resources, what one is going to move us the most towards our living context right now. And what is good about this, the decision tool, is it is about what is right for you right now. And so when we think about the brainstorm, you've probably got 3 or 4 options. So the option that actually is identified as the best option right now, it doesn't mean the other 3 options aren't any good. Keep them on file, because if the same question comes up again in 6 months' time, what's exciting is that you may have the business will have evolved, you've evolved, things have changed. And so those ideas you had then, you can reuse them. And one of those options might be absolutely ideal for that situation down the track. So please keep all your ideas on file, associated with a particular question or particular idea that you want to, decision you want to make, and then that you never know, it could actually be really useful later down the track. So this is the final sort of question, and then this is the decision tool. So we have the future here. So this is the questions. So we were referring to, are we moving towards the future that we want? Root cause, the people, the environment, the energy use and source, prosperity, money use and source, money use and source, gross profit analysis, gut feel, and right direction. And what we would do here is we would put in, I'm just going to put in some stamp. So I'm going to take a tick. And what we'll do is sometimes we can, so if we have to say whatever the option is it moving us towards our future? Yep, that's great. Okay, the people, well, actually, you know what? I actually feel that they might actually find it a bit concerning. I'm not quite sure. I'm going to put a question mark there, which means I've got a bit of a red flag to say I've probably got to have a bit of a chat to someone about some things for it to actually be okay or not. And then the energy, oh, look, it's not quite right. And also that is not quite right. But the energy source and use is okay. So yep, they're okay. I'd probably put the prosperity. I'm going to put a question mark for the prosperity, and you get the picture. So the idea is here, and then of course you can also put not applicable. So for example, the gross profit analysis might not be applicable in this particular circumstance. So we can actually just leave it. And you can just put NA if it's not applicable, if the question's not applicable. So we work through each option separately, and then at the very end we do whether or not which one is heading us in the right direction. You know, and look, it could be one that maybe doesn't have as many ticks, but the point is what you've done is you've thought about the consequences of doing that. So that's the key, is that we're actually understanding the consequences of the actions that we're taking. You know, it may not be quite right, but you know, it's the best we can do right now for what we've got available. Good. Okay, let's move on and let's make the decision, and be aware. And then critically, part of this process is early monitoring. So we're going to monitor whether or not we're moving towards or away what we want. And we're going to try and identify what the earliest sign might be that things aren't moving in the right direction, just so that we can keep an eye out, right? And that's what's key. So the next part is the monitoring. So we plan, oh, look, there's ticks of cassette. So the monitoring is, I'll just delete those annotations. Sorry, clear, there we go, all drawings, there we go. Excellent, now we can move on. Whoop. Sorry. I'll get those back again. Good. Excellent. Okay, now we plan, monitor, control, and replan. So here we go. This is really key. So we now know what we're doing and why we're doing it. We've gone through all the options, have gone through those questions, the filtering questions. We've identified the early signs to monitor and mitigate risk. And so we've made a plan. We're monitoring at the earliest sign. We can control it then and tweak and adjust. I mean, it's that whole notion of an aeroplane is off course 98% of the time. It's only the minor adjustments the pilot makes to ensure that it was, from A to B, it's off track. So the fact that it lands at B is only because the pilot has made continual adjustments for the aircraft. So to ensure it does. So life is the same. We can be, can zigzag a little bit. And so we just need, but we don't want to be, here and wanting to go to B and we find ourselves halfway along A, because that transect way out there is far more time and money to get back on track than if we monitor closely, if we have early signs. So if we find ourselves, oh, we're on the wrong track here, right, well, it's not much effort to get back on track. And so we want to make sure that this is what this monitoring does. It allows us to make those adjustments early rather than late, which is far more costly in many ways. Excellent. And so we control it. And look, if it's out of control, we actually have to do a replan. There's no question about that. If for whatever reason it's just, it's gone off the rails, then right, whoops, stop, replan, make a new plan, and off we go again. Okay, so that's a really key part of this decision process, is the plan, monitor, control, and replan. Excellent. So the filtering questions provides us with clarity, confidence, and calm. We identify who we need to include and communicate with the people. It considers people's time and their energy capacity. The environment, we're checking the ripple effect to enhance our environment and minimise our waste. The energy, money, source and use, checking how we access and use resources is key. For prosperity, this is our long-term well-being. So let's check our preferred future. Let's fix the root cause. Let's identify the gross profit analysis so that we know that we're actually enhancing our business, and fix the financial weak link. So actually really address that, because it's wealth generating. And then also finally, really assess whether or not we're on the right direction, getting the biggest bang for the time and the resources we're allocating. So these are the key questions for the filtering questions, and that's why we end up with that clarity, confidence, and calm. Well, thank you for joining me, and all the very best with using these questions and the decision tool. And until the next video, thank you.